Hi, it's Sandra here from Creating in Spain, and I'm making this video today because I thought you'd like to see how even people like me who do all these videos come a cropper every now and again, and yeah, I just thought you'd find it quite amusing. I wanted some LEDs for making light up cards, so I decided to order some online. Now, it is probably my own silly fault for not checking the details thoroughly enough. I thought I was buying strips of LEDs that were about 6 or 8 inches long. When they arrived, they're this size. Now, considering what I want to do is use the individual LEDs from here, this was a bit of a shock to the system. Because these things are so tiny, they are, I've got about 100 here, but they are smaller than a grain of rice. Literally that small. Don't know if you're getting that in focus, but they are absolutely tiny. And I looked at them and I thought, oh gosh, there is absolutely no way I'm going to be able to use these. But I've got to try. I've got them and I have to try. So that's my tale of coming a bit of a cropper there. But having said that, I have made them work. And the way that I did that is to cheat somewhat. And when I made my circuit up as normal. But when it came to the LED, and the LED is just here, what I did was I took a piece of sticky tape. I made sure the LED was the right side up, and I literally picked it up with the sticky tape. And then I worked out from these strips here which was the positive and which was the negative side. And it turns out I think the negative side was the side that has the circles cut out, and therefore the positive is the opposite side. But also, when I looked at them under a magnifying glass, there are green markers on the back that show you where the negative is. So I worked out that if I take my sticky tape and I put it over my little LED, I can pick it up on that and I can place it over my circuit and position it where I think the break in the circuit is, and then I can test it out. Now, in this particular case, I've got my circuit here and I've got a piece of foiled card, and I can test it by putting that on there, and it lights up. I don't know, actually, if I put my blind down, you should be able to see that a lot more clearly. It's actually quite a bright LED. Let's put my blind back up a bit. So that's how I got it to work. The other thing that I did was, I've got some of these bulbs which are taken from a string of Christmas lights, and you can see this, well, perhaps you can't see, I don't know. I've coloured this wire slightly with a pink marker, just so I know, because that's my positive one and that's my negative one. And what I did was I've kept this on my desk so that when I've got a circuit made, I can test the circuit before I start fiddling around with things that are that small. If the circuit works, then that doesn't, then I know I've got too large a gap between my positive and my negative. But this will, put it on that side for the negative, that side for the positive, and then, when I do that, it lights up. So that is my tester one, and if that works, then I know the circuit is good. And then I can think about putting my tiny, 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 tiny little LED there. The other thing is that you can do, if you end up with anything that is that small, is to make your circuit so that it's a complete circuit, and then to make your gaps in it afterwards. If you're using, as I'm tending to use, foil, you can just put a craft knife through it, and that will probably be enough to create the break for those tiny micro LEDs. And another tip that I will give you, I have here 2 different batteries. Now these are the batteries that I was using when I was making cards previously. They're Philips ones, and they are, trying to see what it says now, CR2032s, and they're probably about 4mm thick, but they're fairly bulky. I went into a shop yesterday to get some more batteries, and I have these, which are CR2016s. They're both 3-volt batteries, but this is only about 1.5 millimeters wide, which means that if you're making light up cards, you only need 1 strip of foam to lift your top layer from the base, because that is the same width as most of the foam that you'll get, the foam tapes and things, if not slightly shallower in fact. And what I did was I cut this out from a sheet of craft foam. I cut it on my silver bullet. I cut it out as a frame, and the inside piece I kept inside. I didn't cut it all the way through, I kept it inside. Then I placed it on my card with double-sided tape around the edge, and then once I'd done that, I just peeled out the inner section. And this meant that I could easily place it on here rather than have it, you know, go out of shape and so on and so forth. It was easier to do. So there we go, that's my tip for that. Now I'm going to complete this card, so I've got some foil backed card, and I want obviously to make sure that the card isn't on all the time. So I'm going to make sure that this piece of card goes over my foam tape on the edge, so it's raised up very slightly. I've put some double-sided tape on here, and that will adhere to my front panel, but I need to stick that down so that my battery remains in contact. So just going to put that over there like so, and my battery is now in contact all the time. When I press that, it's going to go on. It won't go on until that is pressed, because this is ever so slightly raised. Now if you're really concerned about it, you could put another piece of foam underneath, and just have another piece of foam here. So if I put some glue on there underneath, I can do that, and that again will make sure that it is well raised. But I don't need it. I'm going to take that off because this is perfectly fine as is. So I need to remove the double-sided tape backing from that. So a couple of hours later, my card is complete, and you're probably thinking, a couple of hours? What on earth happened? Well, basically everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and it was just one of those days. I think this card was fated from the very start. In fact, it wasn't even supposed to have this design on the front. I was going to have a background with butterflies on it and light up that behind. And I did that, and then I didn't like the result. It just wasn't giving me the effect that I wanted. So I decided to start again with the front panel. And I looked at various stamps that I had, and I didn't have one that I wanted to use, so I made this stamp for a start. Talk about starting from scratch. So I made the stamp. That didn't take very long. And then I stamped it, and I cut it out on my silver bullet, and then I coloured it, and I then realised that I hadn't cut any holes for the eyes, and what I wanted to do was have the eyes sort of cut out transparent, so that I could then stick these googly eyes on and that the eyes would light up. So I then had to stamp another image and cut it out with the eyes cut out. That wasn't too difficult. So I did that, and I coloured it, and I put it on, and I put the card together, and everything worked fine. But Where I had worked out that the bulb needed to go, I thought it was going to be between the eyes. And then when I tried it, it didn't give the effect that I wanted there either. But I found that if I move the design up a little bit so that basically the bulb is somewhere around the nose area, then it did give the effect that I want. And if I can get it to go on, you can't see, I don't expect in this light. Hang on. Let's close my blinds down again and hopefully it will work. There we go. You can see you get lighting up eyes. That's the effect that I wanted. So I eventually got that to work. And then I spent a while thinking, what do I put on there for a sentiment? And so I decided to go with something amusing. Someone mentioned steak, and then you press there and his eyes light up. So I figured that was okay. So I'm happy enough with the card now it's finished, but it did take a little bit of doing. So when I discovered that the light was in the wrong place, basically what I did was I moved all the front panel up a little bit, and then I trimmed off the bottom. And so the card is a little shorter than it started out, but it's worked, and so it's done. So there we go. Not everything goes right the first time when we try and do these things, and even when they go wrong, sometimes they can be made to go right eventually, if you have enough patience and if you're prepared to spend something like 3, 4, 5 hours getting it right, then sometimes it can be done. Sometimes even I will give up on the idea eventually. But I was determined I wasn't going to waste that circuit, and it was going to get used. Okay, thanks for watching. Take care now.